So welcome in, folks. Welcome to another episode of The Grumpy Bearded Men, where we're trying to bridge the generational divide. And we have a very special guest. We've got JCruz here, Mr. Healthy Bearded. I'll let him introduce himself in just a minute. But I just want to say, Jay, I appreciate you, brother. When we went on a little hiatus there for a few months, when Joe moved out to the boondocks and didn't have internet, you kept after me, and you kept saying, yeah, I love that series. I love hearing you guys talk, and it really made me feel good and wanted me to bring the series back. So we're back in part because of you, and I appreciate that. But why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you?
All right. Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm JCruz, Mr. Healthy Bearded on YouTube. I'm a content creator. I create content on beard content. Moving a little bit more into self-care as well. I have a weekly show on Tuesdays nights called the CMU. If you've never been there, you got to check it out. But I'm a huge fan of this content right here. I'm usually the guy that's always up and up my personality and just excited, but I'm also someone that appreciates wisdom and values it, right? So I enjoy these type of conversations, and I'm really excited that the fellas up here invited me to come on and talk some generational gap stuff and just kind of tackle some of these topics. And I'm excited. So yeah, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, we're great. Really glad to have you here. As a young man, it really spoke to me when I hear you start talking about this stuff, and I see you on Instagram Lives, and you're asking people things. You seem very introspective, which is not something I see a lot in younger folks. But anyway, we'll get into all of that in just a minute. Barbado Joe, how are you doing? What you munching on there? Are you snacking the world today?
That's coming up this Wednesday, but no, I have some issues that I've been needing to diet for, so I'm just snacking on some popcorn.
Oh, good. Well, by the way, guys, if you're watching this, we are recording on Super Bowl Sunday, so I've got my chips and salsa in there ready to go for a little bit later. Andy, how you doing, my friend? You're looking very dapper with that ball cap.
We're doing good. Still working on the technical issues on this side, but we are working on it.
All right. Well, you're sounding good here. So I appreciate all you guys being here. And I thought, we can go any direction you want. But one of the things that I was thinking about was some of the generational gaps, right? We've got a certain generation of people think a certain way and had different experiences growing up, which is kind of based, their life becomes based around the things that they experienced. And then you have the younger generation, they come along and sometimes they rebel or they don't understand why the older people think the way that they do. So I thought maybe we dive into that for just a minute here. So I looked up the different classifications of generations, and Andy asked me before, it's like, hadn't this been beat to death over your head? I was like, well, no, not really. It just depends on if it's hit your radar yet. For me, I've heard the term baby boomer. I've heard the term millennial. Most of the time it's just, in context of somebody complaining about stuff. So I really didn't think too much about it. But when you start thinking about all these different classifications and the year and the history around some of these years where people were growing up and really coming up with their morals and their ethical views on things, the different things happening in history and culture at the time, it really starts to make a lot of sense. And we can also see possibly why there are some divides. So just to go over it just real briefly, and then I'll stop talking, turn you guys loose on it for just a minute. But you got your baby boomers, which is 1946 to 1964. And that is post-World War II, the late 40s and 50s, you have a lot of economic prosperity, kind of the Americana dream. You've got just a very Leave It to Beaver and just really wholesome kind of, American dream kind of ideas. Everybody has a car in the driveway and a television set and all of that. But then you get into the 60s, and that's where you start seeing a lot of cultural change. You had the civil rights movement, you had the Vietnam War, and you start to really have some strife there in America in particular. And then after that, you got the Generation X, which I think the grumpy guys here, we're all Xers. Now, I'm at the end of that. I'm 1976. I don't know if you guys want to say where you're at on the generational thing there. So I'll let you guys chime in on that if you do. But a lot of times we grew up in the late 70s, but in 80s and a lot of different things happening there. We really weren't affected by war. We didn't really see like a war going on every day. And so things are definitely a different perspective than my parents. Like my dad, he was a baby boomer. He was born in 1946. That was before the schools were segregated. What a difference that makes from my experience growing up than his experience growing up. A lot of times we'll look back at the older generation and think they're ignorant. And in a way they are, if you use the real term ignorant about not knowing certain things or being exposed to them. And then you got the millennials. JCruz, you a millennial?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So we got a millennial in here. So, and I'm on the cusp of that myself. But you got 1977 to 1995. And then after that, you got your Generation Z, which is 1996 to 2015. And even past that, they're starting to create other generations. But you start thinking about the history and stuff, it becomes really interesting on the dividing lines that have just kind of emerged naturally just over the history. And I have no idea where we want to go with that, but I'll let somebody take it from there. Joe, you got somewhere you want to take off with that as you put that popcorn in your mouth?
Now, I'm not going to pick on the millennials just yet. That Generation Y. One thing my kids say to me that drives me absolutely nuts is I'm bored. You know, we come from a land of 6, 7 TV channels pre-cable. I was born in 1967, by the way.
We had 3.
Yeah, you had 3, right? You had like the ABC, the NBC, and the CBS. Out in California, we had a couple more. And then if you turned on to the VHF, you might have got a couple more. You know? Yep. So that's what I had. I had the Odyssey, which I think was the second, after Atari, it was the second video game. You could do Pong, hockey, and tennis on it, which was basically just Pong, but they put more things out there, right? And that was like right before Intellivision. Intellivision was one of the first big ones, right? And my kids have a cell phone. We have cable with 8,000 million channels. They have video games on both their phone and console. The concept of these kids being born, these Gen Ys, because that's what I teach too, being bored just blows me away and grinds my pepper, as a friend of mine said.
Well, I actually had a video system before Atari that was it was called the TV game, and it was literally just variations of Pong. So you had soccer, which had the proper number of little sliders for it to be a soccer team. You had hockey, which had the proper number. The lines were not any different. The goal size changed. And then you had tennis, but it had a shooting game. So it took me all of a few weeks to figure out, hey, if I point the gun at the sliding glass door, I hit it every time. So there we go on that. For me, though, yeah, I do think I think the generational gap is informed by what's going on with us culturally. Like Brian was saying, you had the post-World War boom time. And then toward the end of that, you started seeing the hippie movement, the flower child thing going on. And then for Generation X, for us, that same distrust of authority that was born from the Vietnam War, Watergate, the gas crisis, all this stuff going on, kind of informed those early years for us. And then right around the bicentennial, 1976, you start seeing that turn around because Carter was in the White House, which, was, we'll keep it off politics, but the mood was definitely starting to lighten a little bit. Not to say that everything was great. We still had the Iran hostage situation. We still had the inflation and all that kind of stuff. But then when Reagan got into office from 1980 on, even though everything was not honky-dory, and I think a lot of people that weren't that didn't live through the 80s have a much different idea of what the 80s was like, and really, truthfully, the 70s and the 60s for that matter too. I think these decades tend to get boiled down to a few stereotypes or a few key moments in them, and they want to associate the entire decade with those few moments, where instead of looking at the broad impact of what was going on in the world. So, and then after the Reagan years, we had Slick Willie and Bill Clinton. So we had that period of time, again, a period of economic prosperity. And that's really the kind of the end of the millennials. So the millennials were kind of bookended with optimism and then some economic prosperity. So compare and contrast with Generation X, and you get a different vibe there. You get a different vibe altogether.
Yeah. And those stereotypes is really something we should always strive to kind of question, right? Because it depends on what subgroup you're part of, right? I was white growing up in America, where I see myself on TV reflected all the time. My subgroup was not marginalized, so I had a totally different experience than maybe somebody else in America. And I'm from the South and pretty rural area, so it just kind of depends on that. And then we've got Jay, you've got a little bit of your your experience and your culture and that kind of stuff. So give us a little bit of aspect there on being a millennial.
Yeah, I going back to kind of what Joe was talking about of, he's mentioning his children and kind of making those type of comments. I mean, me growing up, right, in the urban community in the 90s, being a millennial, I think we had both. This is why I say it's the best millennial, because I think we had best of both worlds, right? We had some attributes still coming from the generation before us, right? And then we were in the middle of like the development of technology. So it would be things of like me and my friends in the neighborhood. First of all, we'd be happy if someone in the neighborhood in the apartment complex had a Super Nintendo. That was the big thing, right? And then it was like, hey, can your mom give us permission to go upstairs? And then we would trade places who can go and, because our parents, immigrants either coming from the Caribbean or South America, Central America here, that wasn't something that was allowed to us in a way, right? That wasn't a priority on for a birthday gift or anything like that. So that kind of environmental conditioning played a role in like how I see the world and just being appreciative for certain things, but also we did appreciate the outdoors, right? Not the best way. We would play stuff like Ding Dong Ditch. I don't know if you guys have remembered that game, like ringing the doorbells and then running, or we would get together because I remember living in an apartment complex. And the kids in the neighborhoods, we would go together and like go down mountains when it would snow. So we would look for ways to enjoy the outdoors. So it came through different forms of play. But then again, right, the technology AOL came about, and then it's like, whoa, we can connect with people. What is this DM? But then it was like every time you wanted to use the internet, it's like, okay, the sound of dial up, right? And then interesting enough for me, one of the things that was interesting was seeing that now, even at a young age, I'm teaching my parents about the new technology that's coming into place, right? So, Mom, this is the internet. This is why you can't use the phone right now because, someone's on the internet and stuff like that. So I got to experience that at a young age. And going back to kind of what Andy was talking about, being like the stereotype of almost being like, that this generation of millennials very optimistic, and I do think there is truth to that, and I'm okay with that stereotype. But sometimes I know even Joe and I in our private conversations, it's kind of like it's almost like we treat life in a way as a story, and we add some romance to that through the lens of being optimistic in that pursuit. So that's what I'll say to that.
Jay, do you remember ICQ?
I don't.
Oh, yeah.
What is it?
It was one of the first person-to-person chat softwares. It was on the desktop, right? Because we weren't all cell phone. It was and it had a little sound bite that was like, "Uh-oh," and that's when you knew someone had texted you back or DM'd you back.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
Yeah, I never heard of that one.
flower would like charge, and when the flower turned green, you knew you were on. And you sometimes, if you hadn't been on for a few days, you'd hear like because you had a bunch sitting in your inbox. I remember when we got the ideas, I was like, "Oh, this is cool stuff."
Yeah, that was in the Napster days and the Wild West days when we were sharing all kind of digital content for the first time. And I remember now it would probably be a much smaller amount of data now, but I remember in those days a friend of mine who still owns a computer shop. He had put together a 1 terabyte hard drive and just slammed it full of music and movies and all kind of stuff. And it was this great big, enormous, almost file cabinet size thing. And but yeah, I definitely remember ICQ. The guy that founded ICQ ended up selling it, and he went on to something else that's popular right now. But he's still in it. I know Elon Musk was involved with it on some level.
Oh, really? Okay.
So he's old enough to have been in Silicon Valley in those days, anyway. But yeah, there were a lot, and just like now, whatever's popular now, Instagram, Snapchat, WhatsApp, whatever. In a few years, those will fall out of vogue, and there'll be something else. And JCruz will find, well, wait a minute, hold on, all the kids are doing this other app, and I don't do that anymore. Just like a lot of people our age and older are still on Facebook a lot, and which, I still check in on it every now and again. I'm not nearly as active on Facebook as I am on Instagram. So I got that going for me. So it's not a complete, I have had Snapchat in the past. So,
There you go.
Look at you, old man. I've never done Snapchat. Joe and I are, at least we're around teenagers all the time. And Joe's got younger kids too, but that makes a difference. You can keep up with things a little bit better.
I was just thinking, I was like, what if I had been a Gen Xer who didn't have a job in education? Because, right after I started, all the teachers started getting laptops, and it just started becoming part of your kit, right? And so not only did I have to keep up to speed, but I also had, 50, 75 teenagers I could reference if I'm like, hey, how do you do this or what? So, and I have gotten less adventurous as I've gotten older. I found my happy place with tech, and where I can do this kind of stuff for hobbies, and I can do the stuff I need to do for work. But when it was early on, I was out there, there was a term like digital native. And I'm like, I want to be an old man and be a digital native. I want to be like these whippers. Now I'm just like, let them have it.
Yeah, I'm still good enough where I can learn something new. We always want to try to be learning. So I'll learn enough new to be able to be semi-proficient or to get accomplished what I need to accomplish. And then I kind of move on to the other thing. It's kind of interesting.
Listen, don't knock something till you try it. I'm on TikTok as well. And I see the older generation before us, they're involved, and some people are making have influence on that platform, right? Because they're just being themselves and maybe even bringing a different perspective. So me, when I'm around gentlemen or women that are a lot older than I, and they're sharing their knowledge of the past, it's almost like watching a movie for me, because I'm like, really, that happened back then? Really, that's how life was, So listen, technology will, like Andy was saying, technology will continue to develop over time, and it's going to be a way that we continue to communicate. Look, we're on Who Would Have Thought, and look where we're at right now on a software right now, connecting all different parts of the country, and we're having a discussion. So
yeah, that's really awesome when you think about it. And 50 years ago, nobody would have ever guessed that for sure. Jay, you're going to have to explain the TikTok to me, because I don't get it. I really don't, because all I ever see when I'm scrolling through, not TikTok, but other short platforms that's got those little things, is either somebody dancing, or they're lip syncing to stuff, or they're reacting to some other video, and they're just going, for 15 seconds, and that's the end of it. And I don't get it. Can you help me?
Yeah, so TikTok is interesting because at first I was very against it. I was like, man, I don't want to look crazy there dancing and doing all that type of stuff. And what really, but obviously, and I had a conversation yesterday. I was doing like a discussion with a couple of content creators. A lot of businesses are really tapping into TikTok, their marketing and what like their advertisement and working with TikTok. But it's really just a place to just find entertainment. That's really what it comes down to. There is some educational aspects of TikTok. And if you see the trajectory of what's happening with social media, it's moving more towards a short formats, right? YouTube will still always be the Google search engine for the world, right? Like how to do this, how to do that. You'll go to YouTube for that. But TikTok is that place where you're going to be entertained. And in between that, you'll find stuff like educational content, but at very limited amount. That's just my opinion. Interestingly enough, I know that Andy is a psychology, a person that appreciates psychology. And I'll never forget what I saw one time on a TikTok. I don't know if the gentleman was, I think his TikTok was all about psychology and things of that nature, but he said something that it had to do with kind of like dopamine releases, right? When you go onto these platform like TikTok, you're looking for the next laughter, excitement, something to make you feel a certain way. So as you continue to scroll down, it's like a hit of, a substance but at that moment you're experiencing dopamine releases or serotonin. And that's what, drives you to keep going down to find something. Interestingly enough, the person that was doing the TikTok, he's like, I know you want to keep scrolling because you're looking for that next like hit. I know. He's like, but don't do it. And I really felt myself like, whoa, I kind of want to keep scrolling. Why am I like, but he's telling me to stop. And it was almost like that urge to find instant gratification at that moment through content, either if it made me laugh, feel angry, something to make me feel a certain way. I think TikTok plays a role in that.
So maybe that goes back to what you were saying, Joe, about the grinding your gears when somebody says I'm bored, because they're not getting that instant,
Yeah.
And that's kind of, and to a certain extent, that's concerning to me, because once you get used to that constant release, that's what leads to being bored easily. That's what leads to having a shorter attention span. Whereas 200 years ago, when there was nothing as far as technology to keep yourself entertained, you were left to your own devices. And I don't think that we as a species are evolving or devolving to become less intelligent. I do think we're kind of preconditioning ourselves to be less likely to do the deep thinking. So that's my concern with it. As far as from a sociological point of view, a broader perspective, that's my concern with it. But TikTok is not the great devil in this. I mean, it's been steadily getting worse. And so it'll be interesting to see if we can overcome that, or if it just gets to the point where where the pendulum just wildly swings back the other way, and people just they want to just relax and unplug from everything.
Well, you see the other movement is towards mindfulness, right? And mindfulness apps, and they're trying to get you to do that. And then even some of the stuff Jay's doing with the self-care and the, those kind of ideas, I think is trying to kind of butt up against and repel against some of that overstimulation or the need to feel that stuff all of the time. It is definitely interesting.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. I think there is such thing as social media addiction. I'm going to tell you something that was interesting. I remember there was a point where I wanted to take a break from social media. And I kind of like hid the app, the Instagram app. I hid it somewhere in because I have an iPhone, so I hid it somewhere. And it was almost second nature, right? I would reach for my phone and I would go look for the app. Mm-hmm. It was scary because it's like, I know logically that I have put it away and I'm being intentional about not using it. But every time I grab my phone, it's like I'm looking for the app. And kind of going back to, I think there could be such thing, and Andy could probably speak to this as well, like overstimulation. And that's what's happening now, right? With social media, you have YouTube, you have TikTok, you have Twitter, you have Facebook, all these different ways to find something to make you feel a way, have a discussion, and like there's some beauty to it, but there can be a dark side as well, right? Because especially on TikTok, an hour can go like this, and that thing you were supposed to get done, now you're procrastinating on it, and you should have got it done before. So stuff like that.
This goes back to that tech talk we had a few weeks, guys. We were getting all of this. I want to bring it back to the generations and talk about Jay's content, because Brian, Andy, and I, we've been around this beard online community, whatever you want to call it, for 3-ish years now, and the guys who have been successful, however you deem success, be it earning money or YouTube views and subs, etc. When I think of the names out there, and Brian, I would include you in this grouping. You have a bunch of white males, and although they did it differently, it was essentially the same kind of thing with their personalities or perhaps their ideas in there, but it wasn't anything radically different. Now, when Jay came along, and this isn't news to Jay, I've told this to Jay, and with the CMU, which I believe is the cornerstone of the JCruz empire, whether it's his millennial status or his ethnicity, his upbringing, I actually think it's kind of a stew of all of these things. We got something different. Jay does reviews, and Jay will do stuff, and he has guys on like companies, and he'll do giveaways and all that jazz. But to me, the CMU is more like an event than any other live. Okay.
It's a show. That's for sure.
It truly is a show. We'll say, I'm going to do my show. Now, Jay has brought this experience to the point now where some of the other dudes who have been around a while are liking what they see in Jay's show and maybe co-opting it themselves, which is, imitation is a serious form of flattery until it becomes theft, or I don't know. The idea is, though, that Jay has been innovating in ways that we, as older men, may not have thought to do, or with the music and stuff like that. I just think it's this combo of things that has really had Jay in his very short time in comparison to other guys make that quick stamp and be one of those guys that if you're going to watch a show, a true event, you're there Tuesday nights with Jay from 8 to 9:30 or whatever it is. Now on the back of that, Jay, you have done something that I think plays to your millennial status as well. You're in your early 30s. The other guys on the screen here are in their 40s or 50s. We have like secure career type jobs. I moved out to Pennsylvania when I was 30, Jay, and I was right in the middle of going back to college. And so I see parallels here. You have taken a giant risk. You're in the midst of a giant risk. And as a teacher, I support taking in my class because I can be the safety net. You don't have a safety net. You're like, I'm going to do this. I've got a goal, and it's maybe a little off the beaten path than what school or my elders would tell me to do. My questions to you are, is there a timetable, a personal timetable for you on this goal, both from a realistic sense of, making rent, buying food, et cetera, or do you have enough time to really pursue all the ways you want to achieve this goal?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously, I don't live in Disney World land, and especially me being a bachelor, at a certain point, entrepreneurship, there has to be some concrete evidence to what I'm doing, right? If I want to be serious about getting married, meeting a lovely lady, and doing all that, and having a family, that's a real fear, right? Concern in a way, right? How am I bringing in income? What kind of brought me to this decision, and well, I will say this, I think a year for me, I said 6 months, but I think a year for me, it's something to test, right? And it doesn't mean that I'll stop doing what I'm doing. It's like, well, buddy, you better go figure this out now, okay? You better go get a job. If you want to switch career paths, and I know we were talking in the green room per se and DMs, and I've said this publicly, I think my job, the mental health field, because I worked for it over 7 years, it kind of set the right pace for me to make the decision to forcefully, in a way, push myself into this. Because originally, and Andy can tell you, mental health is definitely stressful at times working in the field. And there's not enough support even for employees, right? They're having the right team, having a balance of work and life. And that's something, and I think even my generation, millennials, appreciate that, right? The balance of work and life. And my current employer, the organization I worked for, wasn't giving me that. Even when I wanted to transfer to and make less money, make less money. They denied it. I won't get into too much details of that, but that was one of the things and this is where it came down to making the choice. I said, Cruz, if you stay here, will you be happy? Right. And I know it comes back to the optimism point. Will you grow? Will this push you closer to your goals? And the answer was no. So I had already gone through the proper channels to try to make a balance of work and life. And that wasn't, I wasn't able to achieve that there. So I took the risk and I'm in it now. It's a grind. I think part of it, my mentality is remembering that no one owes me anything and that I have to work for everything that I'm getting. So that means changing up content, doing different things and incorporating different aspects of technology to kind of stand out in a way. And of course, I had the support of some great friends that were motivational and inspirational in my decision as well. So, yeah, about a year now. I think that's where I'll be safe. 6 months to a year, but more a year. Yeah.
Well, and I just want to jump in here on this point. One of the things, so there was a period of time, and maybe it still goes on in some circle, where the perception was that people that were baby boomers and Gen X had a problem with millennials. And as a solid right smack dab in the middle of it, Gen Xer, I have always found that I related to the millennials a lot better. Not the optimism thing is hard for me to buy into, but I've always admired that courage to say, you know what? I don't like this and I'm going to go do something else. Whereas, and Gen X we're getting to that point now where we're starting to think about, if we were smart, Brian, I'm sure was smart. Joe got into a field where he wouldn't have to worry about it. I got a retirement, boom. Hey, but some of us out there, we're starting to think about, okay, what's my next phase of life going to be like? So, the idea of now, as far as the transitioning around the age of 30, I was still getting into the, I don't have to go to rehab again phase of my life. So I can, I don't see 30 as being, well, you better have had something done or you're not going to be able to amount to anything because in all reality, he's got another 35 years or so, or maybe 40 years if they raise the retirement age to get to that point. But I do love that about the millennial spirit. And again, not to paint with a 2 foot wide roller brush because everybody's experience is different. But I do appreciate that. That's something I admire about that generation.
I want to say you mentioned something while you were speaking. I'm taking notes as you guys talk. The reason I think my generation is like this, and this is just my opinion, right? Excuse me. When I look at my environment and my conditioning, right? My parents, right? Father worked in a factory all his life, right? Not happy, but had to provide, right? But which means what? He wasn't available emotionally. And I know that some people may have different perspectives on emotions, but there is such thing as in classical conditioning, environmental conditioning, and that was not afforded to our upbringing. So I think as we get older in life, we want to change like the narrative of that. So I will not live my life not being happy at my career, right? I refuse to. That's why I made the change, right? Does that mean that the budget is a lot shorter? Yes. Does it mean I can always go to does that mean I'm always going to be able to go hang out with my friends? No, it doesn't mean that now because I have to make some choices. But I think that is where we're at as my generation, that we're at that point. We're like, no, we're not going to accept that. We can't be treated like that. Like we dictate the narrative. We saw how our parents grew up and how they had to suck it up. And if a boss was disrespectful, they knew that if they left this job, they may not be able to put food on the table. But here we are at now, and it's like, nope. Listen, it is what it is. If I got to work Uber for another 4 months till I start my business, or till I transition into, go back to community college, get another degree, do something, I think that's where we're at. So that's going back to what Andy was saying in regards to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I keep thinking about how I grew up and my parents and all that, and keep thinking, okay, am I the way I am because it's my personality or because of the way I was raised? Because my parents, they worked a job in the factory. My mom worked at the bank, but my dad he made furniture for a living for 30 years. They grew up really poor. They never threw anything away. They never missed a day of work. And there was no risk taking. There was no risk taking. You do this, you do this, you do this, and that's it. I became a teacher because I actually knew what that was. I didn't go into computer programming. I could have really easily got in the ground floor of some computer programming stuff and think I would be really good at it. But I went with something that was less risky. Jay, I'm wondering, how did the elders around you, how are they reacting to your decisions now, where you're actually going, okay, I'm going to do something and try to be happy. I'm going to try this route. It's not a safe route, but I'm going to try it. Yeah. I can see my parents would have had a fit if I would have tried something like that.
Yeah. No, but I think when I approached my family, I was like, look, I'm not looking for your support in a way, right? I'm not looking for your validation on this, because how can they validate something they've never experienced or even seen, right? Someone making this type of risk. What really helped me was my peers, right? A couple of friends in the community like Ken, Dan, Joe from Octane, a couple of people that were like, really like, hey, man, Walt, a couple of people and more friends, right? Joe, we talked as well, very, because it was that motivation, inspiration is like, hey, worst case scenario, I have a degree. Right. And I can go back into the work field and I can find a job, or I can go try a different, try working in marketing or in business, trying something different. But I was like, man, and here's the other thing that really helped. I don't want to get to 60, 70 and be like, man, I should have took the risk.
Yeah.
I should have gone for my dream. Just even if that regret was going to be more painful than living in security. And that's just kind of how I see that part.
Yeah. I feel that. I have a familial regret with my grandparents that taught me about regret, and I wasn't able to make it right when my grandfather passed away. And it was all on me. They couldn't have cared less, but I realized I'd done a bonehead thing, right? And my path to teaching was always because I wanted to be a writer, but I wasn't so pie in the sky. I wasn't ready to take that risk, Jay, and I didn't have kids and a wife at that point, but I wasn't ready to eat Kraft macaroni and cheese for a week straight and grind like an artist has to grind to find success. So I got the job as okay, this is how I'm going to pay my bills, and I'm going to write around that. And then I really fell in love with the job, because I like sharing information with people. But I still had passion. I wanted that publication, and I had published short poetry and short fiction in places, but I wanted a compilation. So when I published my chapbook, I set the goal of I want a book of some nature published by the time I hit 40. And I published my chapbook around 37 or so. And then what it did for me is it said, okay, you can now put that to the side. You achieve that goal. And I used that creative energy in other places. Yeah. For a long time, I was writing raps because I was trying to get my kids to identify poetry and stuff like that. And then it went into the film stuff that I've been doing. And then it went into beard stuff, right? And I'm glad, because if I had not made that goal, I would have beat myself up and I would have still tried to achieve it, but I would have been kind of running in place. It's a big risk to take something you've written and cross your fingers that an editor thinks it's valid enough that they are willing to publish it, right? Yeah. So, and rejection letters are a son of a gun. You get enough of them, you build an armor, because hopefully you're getting acceptance here and there. And so you're like, okay, so really it's just, I got to find the right editor for the right thing. So, but I still I wasn't the same level of risk as you are, because I am thinking now I have moved out to Pennsylvania and I do have a wife. I had a son was part of the deal, right? Before I made my kids and my own genes. And so that's always constantly there. But yeah, I just found it interesting that I moved halfway across the country at 30. You decided to do your thing. And I think you're 31, 32, Jay?
32. Yeah, 32.
I think there's something about that magical age, and you had a degree in your pocket. I didn't. I was working on mine, but you have in your pocket. Yeah. That it's safe enough. Societal pressures are like, a lot of times you had to be married by your mid-20s back in the older days.
Yeah. Yep.
You want to be married at 32, 35, whatever. Okay, no problem. You're not going to get that society reckoning. And you can take that risk. And like you said, worst comes to worst. I've got this degree. And you mentioned Uber. And I've even thought about this because I'm ready to retire. I can't, but I'm ready to retire. Yeah, there you go. And Brian talking about. But I'm like, what about these little side jobs that have popped up? They wouldn't be family, but if I retired a little early, maybe I could do something like that for a couple years to maybe bridge that gap a little bit. But I've thought about that. Those jobs weren't available to us in our youth, right? You can do DoorDash or any number of those kinds to bring something in if you so desired. And I think, again, that too may have influenced our decisions and may have closed in or boxed in our desire to take risk.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
No, I'm saying, and with risk, it's interesting because you don't know what's going to happen, right? I'm loving, like, this is something that I found, and just going to laugh when I say this word, on my journey of content creation. One of the things that I've developed is like a skill set of developing marketing videos. Like me working and creating like promo videos and when to add the right music and when to add transition scenes and I learned that through content creation. And I'm like, whoa, this is pretty cool. And now, I'm able to do it with like for companies that they reach out or content creators that are like, hey, I want to intro this and that. And it's like, I didn't expect that I could do that because I took a risk, and it's something that I'm developing as I get better. Now I'm like freaking looking at videos on YouTube about how to get better with content creation, strategy, marketing. How do you, all these things is things that when I was getting my degree, I was not thinking about, you know what I'm saying? I was like, no, we're going to enter into the mental health field. We're going to help people. And I still do that, but it's to a different degree. Right. And it's like, here I am at 32, loving marketing, loving the art of storytelling, love bringing people together. And I really do believe the reason that I'm that way to a degree is because of growing up in an urban city. Being around so many different cultures, Caucasian, African-American, Asian, whatever the case may be. And I think a true melting pot, right? A true melting pot. And I've always had that personality that, hey man, what's going on? What's your name? Oh, where you from? Oh, for real? Tell me, what do you guys eat in your culture? Like this, and I've always been that guy to kind of be around different cultures and bring them together. I like doing that, So, yeah.
Well, Joe, you remember on one of our other episodes, we talked about, it's your late 20s is when you start to really do some self-reflection, right? You've got your feet under you. You've tried something for a while, a lot of time, and it's time to change a lot of times. Yeah. You got to find a way to be creative and to, find your bliss some way or another, whether that's taking a big risk or a smaller risk. I went back and got my master's degree, and I changed schools. I went from a big traditional high school to a really, really small school where I had lots of input and really got to develop my leadership skills. And I was creating class schedules. So the emphasis wasn't just on teaching math anymore. It was about the whole educational process and building schools and some of that stuff. So you definitely want to think about that as far as, you get into your 30s and it's not really a 7-year itch, but it is, you found yourself and you need an outlet in some form or another. It makes sense to take the risk around that. Andy, you were going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, Jay, for the beard company owner market, that demographic, that sector, the one thing that I hear from them all the time is they really, really want to learn about marketing. That's the thing. That is the niche that I think they struggle with the most. How do I market? How do I market? Period. How do I market online? How do I market? How do I put myself out there? I've got this. Everybody told me that if I put a business page on there and I'm involved with it,
Yeah.
you see some companies do really, really good e-commerce, and you see some just struggle with it. Some of it probably does have to do with the fluency of technology. Some of it is they put their energy into another direction. But going back to the mental health field thing, for me, I got into that because I identified with the weirdos, and I found them to be much more interesting to talk to than I did people that were too busy hiding their problems. So for me, that was always the draw to mental health. And let me say this too, as far as the mental health field, even if you go 5 years, 10 years away from it, it'll be incredibly easy to go back to it because it's always a field that's in demand.
Yeah.
And it does lend itself to, especially if this telehealth model sticks,
Yes.
which I really think it will. I mean, shoot, if you were licensed in the state of Georgia and you lived God only knows where, you could, I could get you a part-time gig like tomorrow. So I don't think that's going to go away. And I don't think you didn't burn any bridges getting out of the field too. And that's something to be said for that too. As far as changing fields. So if you do things the right way, without any, making the front page of the papers, which as a teacher and as a mental health professional, that's definitely something you're cognizant of as far as your career goes. But yeah, I only have two bits of constructive criticism for your current live show. Only two.
Sir. Yes, sir.
Number one, for us old geezers, it would be so cool if you could get the technology, if you could just get it to put the name of the song up, because a lot of times you're just moving and you got this flow, and I am sure people 20 years, 30 years younger than me, they know the song. And I hear it and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I have no idea how to find it. I have no idea how to look it up.
Gotcha.
And I've seen this with other content creators in other categories. You're bilingual.
Yes, sir.
There are so many of them that are starting to reach out to the Spanish-speaking community. You would easily double your reach if you did some Spanish language content.
You do, don't you, Jay?
He's doing it, Danny.
So I do have a third channel for strictly Spanish. It's called Dímelo Barbado, which means it's like slang for tell me what it is, bearded dude, like that. That came up when I went to Beard Octane. They had a booth at the expo in Connecticut at the Mohegan Center, right? The casino. And what was surprising there was so many, and this is a cultural thing, right? With in the Latino community, there's a lot of barbers, barbers and in that industry, Puerto Rican, Dominican, some Mexican, and a lot of them do not know beard care at all. Like I was there talking with them, listening to them. Nobody and they have nice beards, but they're not learning. They don't know that. So that's something that I've always looked to get into, and I have it, but it's a little difficult to introduce a new concept to a whole brand of people. So I'll have to be creative in how I continue to hit that, target that. So,
I did not know you were already doing that. So hopefully Brian will edit that out and he'll somehow manage to
No, it's great.
No, we're gonna let you fall right on your face.
One piece of constructive criticism.
Yeah.
No, we're gonna let you fall right on your face.
The vibe of your show is just it is difficult to maintain that kind of energy. It's difficult to do that, period. But to do that on a consistent basis, that is so cool. That's why first time you and I talked, I told you, a year from now, you're going to be at that level, which is between me and you. I'm not going to put that out there on the world wide webs. But yeah, I think you've got a future at this. I really, really do. As long as you're passionate about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and that's like, it's part of being a content. I just started doing stuff. If you look at my last 2 videos of interaction, I went to go meet the owner of the company that I just reviewed. We sat down at a Starbucks. I pulled out the camera. Don't ask me how I was able to do that, but it's finding, and I think that's part of being a millennial, like finding new and risky ways to engage with people. If I just got an interview mic, I'm going to be doing stuff out on the street, maybe not in my neighborhood, but going out and talking to people and asking them questions about grooming, beard care for people that have beards. What are you using? But getting that, because people like connections, and that's what the CMU is. It's a community meetup, right? It's where you come in and it's like a party and you just hang out and it's a positive time and everyone's having a good time and laughing. And I truly love community. And I love that it can be amongst cultures. We don't all have to be from the same area or grow up a certain way. But if we can find a common place and that builds community, that's what's afforded on a Tuesday night, and I love it. So.
Yeah, and you never know how the things that you're learning, and you're learning how to use your microphones and your marketing, and you never know how that's going to pay back dividends down the road. So that's good. Just keep, I've always said to be a lifelong learner. Always be learning something new, and it'll come into play and keep your mind fresh. Joe, I've got a follow-up question, if you don't mind, for you. Mm-hmm. You were talking about your, in your youth and some of the decisions you were making and that kind of thing. I want to flip that around because you're a parent and you've got some older kids too that, some of the decisions that they might come to you with, and how do you find yourself reacting to those? Do you take the stand at, okay, I'm going to try to tell you what I would have done if I was a kid, or do you just automatically revert to how you were taught by your parents? Because that's what a lot of people do, I think, is like they say they're going to be one thing and then their presto is like, whoa, you can't do that yet.
Yeah, that's a good question. My kids, I have 5. Like I said, I one was a package deal with Kelly when I came here. He's the oldest. He's doing his thing. He was a little problematic through the process. But for my 3 girls and my 1 boy, Ariana has Down syndrome. That's a whole different thing. So we'll take her off the table. Sierra's my oldest and is, in very many ways is the apple of my eye. And I raised my girls to be like boys as far as how to handle boys kind of thing. She did not do well with COVID. She's in college currently. She should be out. She foolishly wants to be a teacher. As flattering as that is, I told her, man, the profession is not going the way. Social studies.
I'm going to talk to her.
Or decisions. I'm all about experience is the best teacher. What I did for, if I had been a traditional student like her mother was, that was 30 years ago. Things changed. She couldn't learn in the COVID style because she was at her university. All her professors were basically just kind of lecturing and dropping assignments in their lap. And after having gone through it as a teacher and as a parent, I think I have a unique point of view, because mom is always the harsher one. Mom was salutatorian at her high school. I was a bum that didn't even get a high school diploma because I was never there. I tested out. In California, you got to be 18 to take the GED. Well, I got out at 17. I skipped first grade, so it's not like I didn't have the brains. It was the advent of video games and role playing for me, and that was way more important than school. So I can't be a hypocrite to my kids. So I don't like to do that because I feel for them to value what I'm going to say, I have to be truthful. I can't do the finger wag unless they know that they're really screwing up and I've walked that path. So my daughter is one thing. Then in the twins, Dante and Bella. Dante is definitely less academic than Bella. Bella could go live on her own right now, and I wouldn't sweat it. Dante, I would be like, holy cow, what's going on? So it's one of those things. It's a nice push-pull because Kelly can bust their chops with grades and stuff, but at the same point, sometimes you just got to make adjustments. They can't be exactly like you were, right? Kelly was great in school. I was great in college in my master's studies, but it's not for everyone. And you got to be able to be malleable and be able to make those shifts, but also push them towards some sort of successful life. It may not be a college degree, but you don't want to, dig in ditches or flipping burgers their entire life. As Jay would say, respectfully. I mean, those are fine jobs, but you can't have a family of 5 with that. That just isn't going to happen. So it's always it's a bit of a tightrope walk. But I am definitely the mellow dad. But they know the wrath of Khan is coming if they do screw up and I say something, because then that means, oh no, now I've got mom and dad. Dad, who's usually in my corner for this education stuff, now he's coming after me.
That's interesting. Thank you for chiming in.
Don't tell me you're getting after your daughter for smoking a little bit of the devil's lettuce now. Come on now. I know you're not going that way with her.
No. She that kind of stuff I'm okay with, and I quite honestly I would prefer that over the alcohol, because the dad is there to show it's a safer choice in many ways. No, that doesn't bother me. Mom had to adjust with that because mom was a goody two shoes. And drugs, I was a goody two shoes too. I did do a little drinking in high school, but not enough to get me into rehab or anything.
Yeah, I was pretty much a prude too.
I'm sure we'll talk about the legalization issue at some point. So
yeah,
but
I wanted to ask you one quick question, what kind of a follow. So Jay, and you got to know, wearing that cap indoors is such a millennial thing to do. Okay, that's number one. So when the old man who doesn't know you comes on and says, "Look at this son of a gun with his cap indoors. He's got a job. He's going to make content." Have you? Because writers, to be a successful writer, that's your job. Writers have various methods of how they want to use their day. Have you set up a schedule for you just on a daily thing that you want to do X amount of things daily, or you're going to use this many hours daily since it has become your job?
Just recently, honestly, but it's more of, okay, I need a video by this day. This is where on Friday I have this show, Tuesday I have this show, this day I'm doing this video. I need to now reach out to this company. I'll write stuff down for the next day at times. And so it's kind of getting that discipline, and I still have to continue to work on that, but yeah. But it's more of that, this is scheduled for this. What do I need to do? This and that. What was it? Friday night though, but stuff will happen to you, because Friday night, Friday to Saturday, I was up till 4 a.m. working on content because my audio was out of sync and things like that happen.
I hate that stuff. Technical issues will drive me nuts.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate, but yeah.
So Jay, do you have any topics you wanted to discuss or questions for us?
I have questions. Okay.
All right, hit it.
So the first question for you guys is, what do you feel are the biggest values in your generation? What are some of the biggest values?
For me, it's work ethic. I mean, and just being able to put your head down and just grind it every day. That's just something. Punctuality is one for me. Punctuality and work ethic. Those are kind of the two things.
Yeah. Okay. Andy?
Let's see. I would say independence and how to verbalize this. A certain amount of not being a prisoner to other people's opinion. A certain amount of, as I posted on my Instagram, and kind of may have been what sparked some of this direction for things. The just not giving a rip. There's a lot of times whenever there's drama going on in the community, I'm like, I don't care.
Yeah.
If somebody starts killing somebody, just let me know who's alive tomorrow. We'll be fine. I don't need to know about all that.
Okay.
Go ahead, Joe.
I don't know if it's a personal thing or a generational thing, but I'm with Brian on the punctuality. I'd rather be 10 minutes early and wait in my car than 1 minute late. You know, that's the thing for me. And the work ethic thing, it's individually holding ourselves to a standard and not being satisfied until we hit that standard, and that standard being high. So my work ethic is, I know what my bosses want out of me. I want something different, but it's going to be more, and working to that. And also being able to, in language, it's called code shifting. When you change how you speak based on who your audience is, like how I talk to my wife is different than how I talk to my infant baby is different than how I talk to JCruz. Knowing how and when to be respectful and when not to, based on the situation. Just being cognizant of that kind of stuff. I think the younger ages and just don't have that same, not all of them, and maybe this is more Gen Y than millennial, but I think we're seeing some of that basic decorum being lost between the cracks in places.
Yeah, that's good. Jay, I got a follow up back to you, and I want to hear what the other guys think about this.
Yep.
And that is, I don't know how to say this and not be, I don't want to be taken the wrong way, but inspirational quotes, motivation does not do a thing for me. And I don't know if it's, I mean, really, it doesn't. I know.
Oh, no, there's a couple of people that feel the same way.
It's just not me. You know, I'm not going to work any harder if you give me a motivational quote or a motivational speech. When my basketball coach yelled at me, it made me not work any harder. I worked as hard as I could every single time I was on the basketball court. And I don't know, I think a lot of that is just me personally, but I don't know, maybe a little bit of it might be a generational thing. When nobody had to motivate us to go to work, this is something we do. That's what I saw my parents do. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I was actually a big fan of the demotivational posters. You know, that was kind of they didn't use the word meme at that time, but you would see them on the internet. I used to love those. Now, my baby brother, and this is very definitely going to be an age culture reference thing. So my baby brother, he's 10 years younger than I am. He got a full-size, across-the-wall poster picture of the scene from the end of The Life of Brian, of Eric Idle, when he's singing "Always Look on the Bright Side." And so that's kind of, that to me epitomizes kind of where we come from. You know, no matter how bad things are going, you can still be a smart ass. You can still be snarky, you know. And that's kind of, I don't know if that's generational or just, you know, something genetic that comes down my family. But yeah, we're a pretty smart ass bunch of people, generally speaking.
Now, Joe's an English guy, English teacher, so he may love the inspirational quotes. Joe, what's your take on this?
Oh, no. I see it in my daughter. She'll see memes or this and that. And I think when she's 98, so she's either at the very beginning of Y or the very end of this. But she's all about that stuff. And I just look at her and I'm like, I taught you better than that. Don't do that. I'm with you, Brian. No pithy saying, or no, I'll sometimes send it to my class to say a message just based on what we're learning. I might throw, it's not necessarily motivational. It's just a good phrase or what have you. Not motivational, not.
Yeah. So it's interesting.
Do you remember the phrase yearbook wisdom? You know, when we would try to put stuff at the end in our yearbook that sounded so smart
senior quotes.
That's exactly what comes across to me.
Yeah. It's funny. We and Joe knows why I'm laughing. This concept of motivational and, you know, I've actually come now in life to kind of understand it and see why some people do not follow it, right? When you look at, I do think it has to really come down to discipline. I look at motivational as an instrument to help you get there. I don't think it's the be all to everything. When you look at people that have been successful at what they do, right? Tony Robbins, Eric Thomas, people that have that gift of public speaking and are able to really tap into core feelings of, individuals that hear them. But I think it has its place. I think it drives emotion, pulls emotion. I know that Joe loves film, right? Same thing with film. It can bring out emotion in you, right? Make you either feel happy, sad, whatever the case may be. Same thing with music. When I go to the gym, I listen to rap music. I listen to certain music that brings out that emotion through lyrics, through beats. If you look at my setup right there, that's a motivational success nutritional fact, right? It's just imagery that helps me to keep pushing forward. That's what I look at motivation as. If it's music, if it's a quote, if it's those type of things, they tap into sensories, right? Of either a feeling or just emotions and those things. So that's why I kind of appreciate it. I don't think it's the be all end all, but same thing with football players. Today's the Super Bowl. The guys are going to be listening to motivational speeches before they go on out to that field, right? Because they're about to go to war, go big or go home, or they're listening to music. So that's what I'll say in regards to that.
Yeah, like I said, it's just I don't respond to it. It's not a thing that doesn't trip my trigger. I understand it, and it's great if it helps you, but it's just not something that registers for me for some reason.
Or a motivational speech like David Goggins is another one.
Or Gary Vee. I see those.
I was listening to Gary Vee the other day. Yeah, so it has its place. It has its place, in my opinion. I did have one more question.
Sure.
Right.
What is your opinion of the recent changes of the family system? And I say that because
I don't know what you're talking about.
So when I say that is a lot of millennials are getting married later in life. A lot are choosing career over family. Divorce rates are a little bit higher in our generation. So what has been looking out in what has been, your opinions on the developments? Did you expect that to happen and things of that nature?
I'm going to jump in with
go for it.
Two things here.
That's good. I've got a handy answer, and it'll take me a minute. So go ahead.
Regarding the marriage thing, I don't know. Okay. I think you could view it as selfishness, and that has such a negative connotation, but it goes back to what you were saying earlier, Jay, about you're seizing this chance. And maybe not getting married till 30 is because people want to enjoy their youth a little bit more, or like you said, they want to get into their career. And some people may call it selfish. I see it. I'm okay. And I didn't have kids till I was 30, 31. But with the divorce thing, so I don't have a problem with that, but the divorce thing, it might be also tied to something you said earlier, Jay. And it's kind of like how millennials have this rep, and data backs it, but they don't like a job. I'm just going to walk the hell out. So, they're going to have so many years or so many jobs versus Gen Xers by the time they retire, right? And I think they might be taking that same attitude towards marriage. I don't know if societal expectation that they had to get married or what have you, they made a bad choice. But, to me, and I'm not old fashioned, but I just think it's smart life skill awareness you should know before you say yes that this is the woman you want to spend 20, 30, 40 years with. Now, yes, stuff can happen down the road to change that decision on either side, but marriages are ending after like 3 years. And to me, that's like, well, you guys just didn't do your due diligence, and you shouldn't probably have never got here. So I don't know why the millennials are doing that. Maybe, again, it's another part of that attitude of, well, this ain't working. See ya, and walking off, which I don't think is how in the long run, particularly if kids are involved.
Absolutely. Good point.
Yeah. So I think the status quo is it's become acceptable for this stuff to happen. Let's see. What else was I going to say? Andy, you go ahead. I'll jump back in a minute.
All right.
I want to hear your dandy answer.
Yeah, the Andy answer. Okay. So traditional nuclear family was really developed after the Industrial Revolution. You look at pre-Industrial Revolution, most families were a working unit. They all worked together if they were farmers, they all worked together on the farm, a division of labor. You were around each other all the time. Also, life expectancy was much shorter. So if you both lived to 50, hey, wow, we've been together for a long time. Now people are living much longer. Have your post World War II boom happen, and that's when the whole Leave It to Beaver nuclear family idea developed. And then late 1960s through the 70s, you saw more divorces, more people waiting later, more people being career oriented. I don't really think that's a millennial thing. I think that's something that's been trending that way. I myself, she is my wife. We got together when I was 35. We've never made it government, just because, again, there's that whole distrust of authority thing is between me and her. We're together till death do us part, but we don't need a piece of paper for that to be realized. So, and I think that's more of an individual thing. I don't think that's a millennial thing so much as it is an individual thing and what they have going on in their life. I'm sure you could go 5 miles from where I am right now and find somebody that, just decries the state of modern society because people aren't getting married and all that kind of stuff. And you could go, somewhere else and find it the other way. I don't really worry about that so much. I would much rather, if someone gets married, and especially if they have kids, if that's a bad marriage, if that relationship is turning toxic, as traumatic as that divorce, that separation might be for the kids, I think longer term, the kids tend to be healthier if they're not in that toxic situation where there's a lot of resentment and fighting and negativity and passive aggressive stuff. So
interesting. Yeah, I am looking. I'm sorry, Brian. You were going to answer too as well.
So, probably for similar reasons that people kind of say, hey, I'm tired of this job. They've got more options now, right? You got all these other things we mentioned earlier. But same thing if you get in a relationship or a marriage, a long time, 50 years ago, you may not see a way out of that. You may not see the other options that are readily available like you can now. So I do think just that part of it's more accessible. And I think it also depends on which generation you're talking about. You talk about the baby boomer generation, you ask them, they're going to say, well, because our morals have changed. We had Christian morals and now we don't have Christian morals anymore. It's not the main thing. So I think it kind of depends on which, who you ask. And like I said, I don't have all the answers, but that's just kind of some things that popped in my head as I was pondering your question. You like putting us on the spot, Jay. What were you going to say?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I feel my generation, millennials, that is a pressure that we do face as far as marriage, right? Getting married, especially in the Latino community. If you're anywhere from 25 to 35, you try to go to a quinceañera or a Christmas dinner and your aunties and uncle not asking you, where's your boyfriend? Where's your girlfriend? When are you getting married? When am I getting grandchildren? That is real. Mm-hmm. And I think, and it broke my heart the other day. I don't know if you guys heard the story of Miss North Carolina, Miss USA, that unfortunately she committed suicide. And one of her interviews, but when she had just turned 30, there was an article where she felt that she was kind of sad a little bit because she felt pressured that kind of her value as a woman was going down. She wasn't married. She didn't have kids yet. And, those type of things from previous generations. That's why I'm saying meeting the standard of what your generation, Gen X, right? Mm-hmm. Gen X and the baby boomers of you have to be married, you have to have this set up, these are things that millennials still face, right? The hey, you need to be at this age, this. And I remember like in my 26, 27, even when I was 20, I was like, when I'm 27, I'm gonna have my house. I'm gonna be married. I'm gonna have 3 kids. We gonna live in the South, whatever the kid and all that. And that's not the reality. You get a college degree, you're expecting to make X amount of dollars, and you have a student loan that's like the down payment of like a car note, and it's like, whoa, what? And if you live on the East Coast, and that's why there's articles of a lot of millennials still living with parents and stuff like that. And that's true. It does happen, right? I'm one of them, right? I still live. I'm moving out this year, and me and Joe were joking about it. But this is the year I move out. But because it's hard, at least up here on the East Coast, right? Student loan debt is a real thing, and the risk and return. And Andy, with all due respect, man, if I could go back and change degrees when I first got into college, I would strongly consider it. I would strongly consider it. The achievement for me as coming from immigrant parents was to get the degree. No one taught me along the way of what the market was, what was in demand, who makes more money. I led with a place of conviction of I want to help people. Yes, but no one told me licensing is where where you make more money. No one told me you would have to put X amount of clinical hours. That's things that I had to learn. And by that point, I was already with 50 credits already in. So it's these type of things that millennials kind of, in a way, I don't want to say got the bad rep for it, but it's things that do happen and kind of where we're at today. So we're trying to fix those problems in a way.
Well, the job market is such a moving target, though, because I read an article recently. It says the most in-demand job 20 years from now is not even been created yet, right? Yeah. So you just think about that. So, I mean, how do you plan for that, when you're 18 years old trying to figure out what to go into?
Yeah.
Well, now, and let me go back to what you were saying. I agree with you. For myself, I would have chosen a different path with my bachelor's degree. My bachelor's degree, don't say this, but don't let this get out. But my bachelor's degree was in education, and I realized that they expected and demanded way too much conformity out of teachers, and I would never be able to pull that off for more than about 5 or 10 minutes at a time. So I said, well, I got this degree in education. What can I do with this? So that's where mental health came in. And, I don't consider this my final career. I've got one more transition in me once I get to a certain level with this, and it may be
beard model.
So, in my family, we live a long time. We live a long time. So, when you've got grandparents and parents that are in their 80s and 90s and hitting triple digits, I don't want to. I'm not thinking that, okay, whenever I turn 60 or 65, that's it. That period from 60 to 65 is going to be what am I going to do next? So I'll get lazy. I got to have something to do. I won't be productive.
Yeah. And my experience, right? Who was it? Joe, I think, said your experience is sometimes your best teacher. I used to be, you have to go to college to be successful. I was conditioned that way throughout elementary. I saw my teachers through high school, same thing. Now at 32, I am not one of those people. The fact that there are people that can get certificates and make over 80K a year, people that are making now over 100K a year with either creating a business. And so all those things for me, I've learned to adapt. And like my kids, if they want to go to college when I get married and my wife has kids, they want to go to college. Hey, we'll support you. But if you want to go after high school and start a business, get into tech, you want to own a trucking company. That's another development that I'm seeing. A lot of people are getting into trucking. My cousin just got into trucking and the brother's making over 1K a week. And it's like, it's changing and it's a little bit eye opening for me. To see the transition of the market and job market and what people are making and how college is not necessarily a necessity. I mean, I'm not going to lie. The other day I was looking at like classes to get into marketing, like marketing classes at like a community college and stuff like that just to learn. But one of the awesome things is technology is so accessible that a lot of the things you want to learn, you can find them online, just that you have to find the right source. So.
I have a quick question. Is your cousin single?
No.
Okay.
He's married and has 2 kids and 1 on the way.
Wow.
It becomes, just with the trucking career, then it becomes a value sort of thing, because he's not going to see his family as much, but he's going to make some nice money. And so now it's like, okay, so how do those scales balance?
Yeah.
And that is an individual thing. That's not a generational thing. But money, unfortunately, is the evil that drives us all to do better. And hey, $1,000 a week starting off. If I could have come out of college making that, I would have been very, very happy.
Yeah. You know, and it's just goes to show you, man, times have changed.
Joe, there's a lot of couples that actually drive together. Like they'll take turns driving.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which is interesting.
I think it's more about the accumulation of skills. So however you get those skills, that's the important thing. Having marketable skills. Now, obviously, we all know the value of going to university to gain the skills that we did. And there's something, but at the same time, any job that I've ever had, I had the non-degreed, non-credentialed form of that before I pursued it. So for years, I worked in community outpatient, mental health, DD, that sort of thing. And I knew that was a population I enjoyed working with. So really what I needed was a piece of paper that said, hey, you can do this, and I can get paid more to do it. That was more what it was like for me. But that being said, I'm the after poster on what not to do with your career, because I didn't really sit down whenever I was 15 years old and plot out my life. And I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. Again, echoing what you were saying, where's my passion? What am I happy doing? Because if I'm not happy doing it, I'm not going to do it long.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the thing with me even now with content. Because I sit back and I reflect. I'll ask myself questions about what I'm doing with my channel. And while a lot of people that get into YouTube or content creation, the numbers is what they look for. And one of the things that I learned early on, it wasn't the numbers, it was the impact. The impacts will create the numbers. How are you impacting people's lives for the better? That is the real currency. That is the real value, impact. And if you can do that with any career choice that you're getting into, it's another translated meaning, kind of like what Andy says, developing and acquire skill sets that people value. So, yeah.
That should be a goal we all have, is to add value to people's lives. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything?
No,
guys.
That's it.
Well, guys, I really appreciate it. Jay, it's been awesome having you in here. Just 2 questions is all Jay had, he said.
Yeah,
He'll have to save the rest for next time. We love having you on here and getting your perspective. And it's just a breath of fresh air to see that kind of passion and thoughtfulness in someone as young as you. And just we appreciate everything that you're doing and wish you all the best of success. By the way, I will put all of Jay's links down in the description. And also, if you guys weren't aware, we're going to roll these videos out as a live premiere on YouTube, which means you can watch it as it's while it's rolling and do a live chat. I'll leave the live chat on afterwards. So if you're watching this after the fact, you can just click on the live chat and watch what other people have to say and fill up the comments. And if you guys have any questions for us or topics you would like to see us discuss in the future, please let us know. You can follow us on Instagram as well. I'll put all of our information there. And as always, guys, we appreciate you watching, and we'll be seeing you soon.